Go ahead and say hi. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'll give it a couple seconds. Hi, Martha. Hey, Chris. Let me just make sure it's showing up here. There's usually a little bit of lag time, but I am at the shop today and it looks like it's working. Great. All right, so hi everybody. I see there's a lot more of you on the chat. Hopefully that helped. When we have a live chat, and I always put the link in the club page of whatever the class is. When you click on it, you can just press the play button if you just want to watch. But if you want to participate in the chat, click on the title of the video and that will open up the entire video player in YouTube, and there you'll be able to see the chat. Okay, awesome. We have Flor de Linda tuning in from Tennessee. Hi. All right. So I'll give it a few more seconds for anybody else tuning in. Hi, Ella. Ella from Houston. I was in Houston a couple weeks ago, and the weather was just like Florida, hot and muggy. I'm gonna pull this up on my YouTube page here because sometimes the chat is a little bit easier for me to see on here. Hi, Lenora. Good, we have a bunch of people tuning in today. Awesome. I hope you all had a good holiday weekend. If you're here in the US, our town, they call their fireworks show like the largest small town fireworks display in the country or something. But it was raining, thundering, and lightning, and I'm talking raining cats and dogs, okay? So they didn't do the fireworks on the 3rd, which is when they typically do it, but they didn't end up doing it. I don't know if they postponed it maybe for yesterday or something, but we couldn't make it because we had to work at the shop. So I was hoping I could pull this up on here just so I can keep the chat up. Maybe, maybe not. Hi, Kayla, or Kayla. Sandy's asking how the house is coming along. So for those that don't know, we are building a new house on our same property. We're not moving. I mean, we are moving from one house into the other one, but we're building it on our same property. The foundation is in, but they still haven't like finished off the slab part of it. So I think they're gonna be doing that this week, since late last week, like right before July 4th, we had like 5 truckloads of dirt to come in, and they're just mounds right now. So they still have to smooth them out and then put the slab down. And I had told the guys working, like, we're gonna have concrete floors in there. So the guy was like, okay, we'll make sure we do a really good job so that it all is nice and level, because my floors, I'm not putting tile or wood or nothing. They're gonna be what they call stained and polished concrete floors. So I'm excited about that. It'll be something funky and something easy to clean and will probably outlive me. So that'll be good. I don't know why I closed it. Oh, good. Here we are. I just want to make sure that I can keep the chat up here so that I can see it, because on my phone here, it kind of just scrolls up really quick. Laura says it sounds awesome. It is awesome. It's kind of exciting. We thought the house was going to be like massive because it's way bigger than what we really wanted. But the way it worked out with the builder and the bank and stuff, it had to be around that size. So I was like, well, if you got to add a few more square feet, add it to my sewing room. That's how I roll. So yeah. Oh my goodness. What? I can't click on it. Hold on. Okay, here. Sorry, because I know sometimes I get questions and I just want to make sure that I can answer them or see them all here. And hopefully, if it starts kind of going slow or lagging or something, let me know. Okay, good. There I can see everybody. Wow, Hell, how do you pronounce your name? Is tuning in from Denmark. That's awesome. All right, so let's see. Having a problem. Candy already has her first question, and let me see if it's the same thing. I put some of the blocks up on the wall here. Hi, Margie. Hey, Pat. So let me hike this up higher. Okay. So I put some of the blocks for the paved road quilt up here because I've seen like a little chat going on in the Facebook group of people saying that, hey, my block units here to here don't match up. They won't. Because they're 2 different blocks, one features a lot more pieces than the other, and they were all cut to different dimensions. They're not gonna match up. I feel like a lot of quilters really have that in their head where like every corner, every seam intersection has to match. In a block, it will, or it should, because Remember how we've been going through the different video lessons, and as I create the individual units, then when we piece them together, I always tell you this is a 4-patch block or a 9-patch. And it's because the individual sections create others, right? Like 1, 2, 3, we sew them together in a row. 1, 2, 3, that's another row of 3. And then down here, 1, 2, 3 is also another row of 3. So this ends up being a 9-patch. Well, it works out like that because each unit has to come out to whatever the specific size is so that then you can easily sew them together. But that's only in one block. When you start mixing and matching blocks, you're not gonna have blocks that necessarily match up exactly. Unless, say this is a 9-patch and this is a 9-patch where the individual units that make up the 9 patches finish the same size. Then you could have a totally different block and have those units match up, which seems to be the case in this block here. So a totally different block than this one, but it's also a 9-patch where those square units finish the same size. So that's the only time really that they're going to match. Or of course, if you make the exact same block, repeat it a bunch of times to get your overall quilt design. Okay, so does that make sense? So these two don't measure up, like they're not gonna match up. And I'll take some measurements here. The little 4-patch block on this one is giving me 3 1/4. So that tells me it's going to finish at 3 inches because remember, if the unit was 3.5 by 3.5 finished in the quilt project, it will finish at 3 inches square. We're eating up a 1/4 inch on all 4 sides of that one little unit. And because it's already been sewn down here, I know that I'm gonna have an extra 1/4 inch than I do of the finished length because this top edge is loose. It hasn't been sewn yet. Okay, so does that make sense? So this is going to finish at 3.5 inches, or that was 3 3/4, I'm sorry. So it will finish at 3.5, a 1/4 inch smaller when this top edge is sewn to something, whether it's a border, another block, or it gets eaten up by the binding, whatever it is. And then this unit here, right now measures 4 1/4. So I know when this top edge gets sewn to something, it's gonna finish at 4 inches. So they're 1/2 inch off, okay? So the only points really that are going to match up are block to block when you're combining one row to the next, because in that case, we have blocks that finish 12 inches square, right? Each individual one, the ones that I did at least, are 12.5 inches square. That means that from here to here, regardless of what the patchwork pieces are inside of it that make up the 12.5 inch measurement, they're gonna match up at all the intersections of block to block across all the rows. So hopefully that helps you all and makes a little bit more sense. I don't want you thinking, oh no, it's me, I'm not sewing it correctly or whatever it is. If the finished unit is not the same size, then there's no way, then it's not going to match up, okay? Which is fine. Everything does not have to be, I mean, it's not that it doesn't match, it's that there's different size patchwork units in each block, okay? I get that a lot too with the 10-inch slicer quilts, where I designed the quilt with the 10-inch slicer to have you not waste fabric and use your pre-cut squares. And then people tell me, well, why did you keep it at 9 inches by 9.5? Why didn't you square it to 9 by 9? I'm like, you don't have to. You know, why would you cut off an extra 1/2 inch off every single block across 7 rows? You're losing 3 inches or 3.5 inches across the whole length of the quilt. If I'm paying for that fabric, I might as well leave it in there. So don't get bogged down with it having to be a certain, like you have to fit into certain parameters that you think you do. As long as the patchwork blocks measure what they should, the blocks will come together easily. And then when each block is the same, you know, is the size that it's supposed to be, then it's going to get sewn to the next one over perfectly fine. Okay? All right. Let's see. So let me go back to Candy's question. She says, I'm having a problem with the Unit A measurements. Unit A turns out bigger than the 3 1/8 inch it should be to fit with Unit B of the Lemoyne chain block. So let me pull up the PDF real quick to see exactly the dimensions. Obviously, I can't memorize everything of these units. Let's see. So she says Unit A, the squares, okay. Measure what? 3 1/8. Let me see. Unit A turns out bigger than the 3 1/8 inch it should be to fit with Unit B. to fit with unit B. Oh, I see what you're saying. So your 4 patch. So let's find a darker one here that will show up a little better on camera. This guy. Whoop. So let me see if I'm getting this question right, Candy. You're saying that these units end up smaller than this unit here to be able to be sewn next to it? That's a quick fix. I mean, it tells me that the reason that they're off is because of the seam allowance that you're using here. So if it's too small, then this chunk is going to be, like if your seam allowance is being sewn too small, it's going to be bigger than this, meaning taller, because that means that you're not eating up enough at this intersection of these 2 patches right here to bring them down to match the full length of that unit B that you're sewing to, okay? So if it's too small, your seam allowance is too big, okay? You got to find kind of that sweet spot to make sure that these 2, when you sew them together, are the proper seam allowance so that then it combines to this one. But it's an easy fix. If it's only off by a little bit, sew them together. Make sure that you have better, I would rather spend my time and energy matching these intersections and the centers of these 4 patch, and then just trim off whatever is sticking up here, sticking out up top. Does that make sense? Because there's no triangles, there's no points there. So it must be something here with the seam allowance that is affecting the finished height, because if these 2 are cut precisely and sewn precisely, they will end up at the same height of unit B, okay? So play around with the seam allowance, take a measure of it, and see if it's too small or too big, and that's what's maybe throwing you off, okay? All right. So Martha Carter is asking, I've watched some of your other YouTube videos where you mentioned block variations by a certain variance that can still be used. In your opinion, what is the allowable variance? I love this question. For me, I would say, I've gone as far as to fudge even ones that were 1/4 of an inch off. But I would say 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch even is pretty easy to still put together. What I do is that I just, and she's saying, say you have 2 blocks, and one is like a little bit shorter than the other one, and maybe you don't have enough fabric or you ain't got enough time to make that block again to make it be perfect. I will still make them match up, even though the seam allowance on one will be slightly smaller. If that little bit off that it is still enough to catch in at least 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, I say go for it. But you just have to make really sure that you can, after you sew that seam, check both sides to make sure you cut all of it across. And if you have a smaller stitch length, that's going to help that seam be a little bit more secure. Okay, so that is what I do. If they're a little off, like a sliver off, as long as it's enough to be caught in a seam allowance to where, like if you just went like that, it's not that close to the edge that it's just going to fray and come apart, then I say go for it. And for me, I say if I can catch at least 1/8 of an inch of it into the seam allowance, go for it. All right, so great question. Because some people think that if it's off by a little bit, it's not. If you can still catch it in the seam allowance, who's going to know that there's a little less fabric back there? All right. Hi, Sally. Thanks for tuning in. Okay. Flor de Linda says, I'm okay with it not matching. There are enough to match in the block. I know, right? There's a lot of pieces. But let me say something. The Ohio Star block that just went up this week, I was expecting to get a bunch of really frustrated emails and messages and stuff. And all I've been seeing is perfect blocks. You guys are totally killing it with the stars. So I see a lot of people really like the star blocks. So we're moving forward with 2 more mystery blocks of the week. And so remember I said that was the halfway point. And so we were kind of transitioning into a little bit trickier, more points, triangles, ones that if it's off, it's going to be hard to trim up because you're going to cut into your points, which is not a big deal. If you make several star blocks and you just have to, you have them say a specific size, and when you go to sew them together, your seam allowance is cutting into the points, don't freak out about it. Make at least 1 or 2 quilts like that. It's not a big deal. You can still see the overall shape, and just know what you should be working towards in terms of accurate prepping. I like to starch. I think that definitely helps. Cutting, pressing, all those little things, and finding that perfect scant 1/4 inch seam allowance is what really, really is going to help. And of course, a lot of practice. But I've been seeing people there saying, oh, this is my first whatever block, and it's perfect. I'm like, okay, Do y'all need harder blocks? Let me know, because I can bump it up a notch for sure. All right. Hi, everybody. Hey, Miss Ethel. All right. Yes, several of you are really far along on the mystery quilt blocks. Hi, Miss Phyllis. Okay, so that was one of the things I wanted to talk about there because I did get some emails about that. I am going to be out of town starting next Sunday for a week. I am working on a secret project that I have to fly out of town for. So just be on the lookout. You know, those 2 mystery blocks will post, one this Wednesday, one the following Wednesday. And if you ever need to get a hold of me directly, about like one of the projects and stuff that my assistants and employees and stuff can't help you with, that, you know, it's a question specifically for me, in the quilt club, you can always just message me from the website. It'll say like contact your instructor. Let me see if it does it on the club memberships one. Or I'll just, you know, most of you have my email address. On any of the emails that I send out that have like the email that I sent out today saying, hey, click here for the live chat, join us today or whatever, those all come from my email address. So if you find any of my old emails in your inbox and you just hit reply, they will come directly to me, okay? At my Gmail account, which is craftygemini@gmail.com, okay? And I'm usually always behind on email, so just be a little patient with me. But if it's something that it's only I can answer it, then yes, okay? Jennifer says, awesome. Secret projects usually mean interesting things in the future. This is true. Enjoy your travels. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Audrey says, since I haven't started yet, I have some starching questions. Since we starch before cutting, how large of a piece of fabric do you starch in advance of the cutting? This is a great question. That's going to vary depending on the fabrics that you're working with. So let's assume you're buying yardage, or you buy yardage ahead of time and you just happen to have 2 yards of a fabric that you want to use in your project. I first I guesstimate in my head like how many of these rows I'm going to need based on the yardage that the pattern tells me. Like if it says half a yard for a specific fabric, or it tells me how many pieces, say you need 24 4-inch by 4-inch pieces, I kind of will guesstimate like, okay, well, 3/4 of a yard should be plenty. And I will cut it down. Not always the smartest thing to do, but if I have a lot of yardage, that is what I'll do because I know that I won't run out, right? Like if I have a lot, I'll know like I'll still be able to cut into more of the yardage if I need it. If you're doing fat quarters, that is a perfect size, even if you're working on a smaller ironing board table. But if it's yardage, I typically will do a yard or so at a time. If I know that there's like 1,000 pieces that I need to cut out of something, I will starch a bunch of it. You can also, if you don't want to like just hack into your yardage and break it down, I will just starch a chunk of it and still leave it attached to the yardage and press, fold it in half. I cut my strips from there. And if I see that I'm cutting and I'm already getting to the fabric that's not yet pressed, then I just stop, take that next chunk, you know, and just keep starching and pressing as I go along and use it so that I don't have to starch the entire piece and then only cut like 2 strips. That makes sense? So hopefully that helps a little. All right, let's see. Jen says, I kind of want to wait to see all the blocks and maybe make a quilt using a combination of the squares. So the mystery block of the week, I've done it not necessarily as a sampler quilt because there's 3 different sizes for each block that people can be making, but you could do a sampler block. Some of the blocks have kind of a different, like they look different proportionally than some of the others, right? So like the Friendship Star block is like the star takes up the whole thing, like the whole center of the block. And it looks like, oh, there's only 2. It looks like almost like there's 2 chunks, right? Like there's a star appliqued onto a background. And then you have others that have so many different little pieces that it doesn't necessarily go perfectly together. Like if you just bump them up next to each other, but all the different blocks would make amazing quilts by themselves. Like what I would call solo block quilts, which I used to design a lot of quilts like that back in the days when I started, when I had little babies that were nursing all day long and I didn't have time. It was just like streamlined, like assembly line, cut everything, piece everything, like strip piecing. And it was the same block over and over again. And then you put them together and they look like a full entire quilt design. Is just one block repeated. So you can streamline the process a little bit that way. If you design to pick one block and make quilts just off of one block, that's always an option. And I did get an email asking about the mystery blocks of the week. If you wanted to make a quilt with it, like how many blocks would you use? So go back to the low volume confetti PDF, which features just the one block. And the PDF tells you how many blocks at 12.5-inch blocks that will finish 12 inches to use for all the different sizes. It doesn't matter that it's a different block. If it's the same size, you're gonna end up with the same size quilt. So if you're wanting a baby quilt, check out the PDF, any of the PDFs that are gonna be for the course projects, right? The low volume confetti quilt will have the information on making the quilts in 3 different sizes for 3 different block sizes. And so will the paved roads one. If each block, even though we're featuring 2 different ones, are measured 12.5 inches, 12 inches squared, finished, then you can use those same dimensions to figure out, well, how many other 12-inch finished blocks do I need to create quilts this size, okay? So it's just like a basic formula because the blocks are all the same. Hi, Sue. Thanks for tuning in. CK Borman is asking, can you use a spray sizer instead of starch? What's a spray sizer? Spray sizer? I'm not familiar with the term. Let me know what it is. Hi, Miss Valerie. Prudence is asking, I've been told that starch attracts bugs. Have you had any problem? So I have heard this. I've never had a problem because really, I starch my fabrics. Notice I said even when it's connected to the yardage, I starch and press as I go and I go using it. So I don't just starch all my yardage and then like fold it up and put it in my stash. I don't do that. The starch that I use for the patchwork pieces I'm cutting and piecing into a project. And then when I make the project, I wash it. So then there's no starch left in it. I use it more as a helper, an aid in prepping my fabric to make it easier to cut precisely, sew precisely, and even press precisely after the patchwork units are pieced together. And then after that, I wash the project. So I don't think I really have projects that have just been starched and left that haven't been washed. So I can't say I've had any problems. Sue says, Vanessa, your PDF formats are wonderful. Glad. I'm so glad to hear that. I think it's good to have it all in one sheet. You know, you can figure out what you want, what sizes, and you can see and work it out also the math of how much fabric you have. If you don't have too much fabric, but you're only making a baby quilt, you can get away with a lot, you know, using smaller blocks, incorporating a solid in there to make up for maybe some other prints that you don't have or are missing. And that way you can play around with those 3 very common sizes, the 6-inch, 9-inch, and 12-inch finished blocks. All right, Jennifer says, thank you for giving 3 sizes. I'm really considering using the 12-inch block. In theory, I could take 4 6-inch blocks and make 1 12-inch block so that I could have some little stars with big stars. Oh, I see what you're saying. The 6-inch make some 6-inch friendship stars and put them together with some of the 12-inch stars, right? Yeah, as long as the seam allowances work out, you should be fine. 6-inch, if they finish at 6 inches, yeah, because finished 6 inches and finished 6 inches are going to equal the full size 12-inch finished block. That would totally work. What a cute idea. Look at you. So smart. That's awesome. That would be a cute little quilt. All right. Oh, Deb is saying sizing is like a lighter starch. It comes in a spray can like a starch. Oh, I've seen that, like magic sizing, right? Yeah, you can use that. That's the same, you know, similar. Again, I said I use it as a prep aid, right? To help me prep the fabric. And that stuff, if it gets it a little bit stiffer, just like a starch, go for it. And there's some people like Margie, I think makes her own, right? Margie, you make your own using vodka because it's made from potato starch and stuff. There's several recipes out there. Some people use, what's that expensive one that all the quilters like? It's like a little bottle. Yeah, Margie says yes, she makes her own starch. So anything really, the point of the starch is not that it's like the brand that I use or this and that. I mean, I do love me some Faultless heavy starch because with one little spritz, it's nice and crisp and I don't have to go multiple. Sally says, why would anyone waste vodka? Girl, quilters. Best Press, that's the one. Yes, Margie, Best Press. It's like it's not in an aerosol can, but it's still like in a spray bottle. It's kind of clear and it comes with different scents and unscented. And a lot of quilters really like that. I starch way too much to spend that kind of money on any old starch that I can get at the dollar store, okay? So that's too much for me. Mary Ellen's Best Press, that's what it's called. Mary Ellen's Best Press. So So that's something to try. I mean, if your local shop has that and you want to give it a go, some people don't like it to have a stiff hand, but they want the fabric to lie a little bit flatter. So there is a product called Flatter. It's by Soak. It's a Canadian company. They do a lot of kind of like really gentle wool washes. A lot of knitters and crocheters will use it when they block their projects with a little bit of that wool wash in there called Soak. But they have a product called Flatter, which comes unscented and then a few different scents. And it's really light. It just helps smooth out wrinkles. It doesn't crisp it up like starch, but it does smooth everything out. So Margie says that using the vodka, she's able to make a starch that has no odor, which is really great. A lot of these companies will come out with scentless ones, like unscented or whatever, but like the ones that come in the aerosol can, they're always gonna have some type of a smell if you're getting aerosol, right? CK Borman is asking, it's Carolyn. I keep saying CK Borman. So Carolyn is asking, do you ever stack the fabric to speed up cutting? Girl, all the time. That's how I cut. But I try to stay away from doing too much of what I normally do in lessons, because for beginners, it's oftentimes already difficult to cut through one layer of fabric accurately, that I don't want to be like, double fold it. We're now going to cut through 4 layers and wing right through this. But I definitely do. If I have a sharp blade on my rotary cutter and I fold it up right so that it's not like off grain and then folded, where you're going to get like you're trying to cut a strip. Have any of you ever done that? And you end up getting like a boomerang, like it buckles in the center fold because the fabric was off grain. I'm pretty good at making sure that I don't have those problems, so I can cut all kinds of strips and subcut stuff. But another option for people who like to do that, or if you work on projects that feature a lot of the same cuts for the same blocks, you should definitely, another option would be to look into a die cutting machine. And by die cutting, I mean like the ones that have a die and the big thing, like the quilt Go, and you know, they come in different sizes, or the Sizzix Big Shot, I think it's called. Not like a scan and cut where you're only going to be cutting through one layer at a time. I'm talking through like, say you're making a tumbler block quilt. And for those that don't know, it's kind of like a little shape like that. It looks like a little tumbler glass like this. And the die for that, I mean, you can layer up like 8 to 10 layers of fabric and just crank them out. I've made a quilt like that in less than an hour, like the entire top piece. Super easy. So if you're someone who doesn't like cutting and wants to look into how you can mass cut Patrick pieces, those machines like that are definitely worth it, I think. You know, I have a bunch of different dies that I use for like really quickie quilts that is just like the same thing over and over again. Boom. And I can just crank out a ton of layers from that. Okay. All right, let's see what else we have. Oh, Flor de Linda says she loves Soak for just my seams. I love Soak for just my seams. What do you mean for just your seams? Or like Flatter? Like the brand Soak? You mean Flatter the product? Or Soak like the wool wash detergent? Audrey says, I couldn't find any cheap spray starch at the dollar store, so I got Easy On from Walmart. It says it's a speed starch. I've never heard of that one. Try it out and see what you think of it. I get mine, the Faultless, I think I get it at Dollar General? Dollar General or Dollar Tree. I think that's the 2 places where I get it. Martha says, speaking of off grain, how to square up yardage. Sometimes I still get the elbows in my yardage and wonky strips. So this can be tricky. One, because nowadays fabric manufacturing is getting like sloppier and sloppier. And so oftentimes on a solid, it's easier to tell because you can see the grain line going this way and that way. And even when you fold it, you're like, there's no way. This is like, I see it going slanted, so you can reposition it and fix it. The mistake that I see a lot of people make when they're trying to square up yardage is that they fold it in half and they aim for matching selvages. You don't want to match the selvages because that is you assuming that the fabric in between selvage and selvage, the whole width of the fabric there, has been printed on grain. So if you have like stripes or any type of directional print, people will sometimes be like, well, let me match the selvages to make sure it's on grain. And if you do that, you will see that the fabric, the grain line is off. It doesn't lie completely parallel, horizontal like this as you look at it. Instead, I let the fabric fall and tell me where it wants to fall flat. And oftentimes when I do that, it's on grain. And when I look, the selvages are completely off. So do not go by that manufactured selvage edge to line your stuff up. I like to say you're working with a yard of fabric. And let me see if I can do this for you, just to kind of show you how it falls flat. Hold on. All right, let's play a little game. So, this is fun, y'all. Good questions. All right, so I have a yard of fabric here. Let me flip it so you can see the selvage. This one happens to be pretty in line. I mean, it's not selvage to selvage, but as it's falling flat just shy of the selvage edge, it looks like it's about the, oh no, it doesn't. Let me turn this around so you can see. All right, so can you see where this was just folded off the bolt? You see how this edge, this is also the selvage edge, but folded up, it's like folded nice and flat, but it doesn't reach all the way to the selvage, to the same section of the selvage edge. You see how here this one is higher up than that one? It's not much, but I'll show you what I do to get this to fall flat. And I'm sorry if I'm giving you the Blair Witch headache here with moving the camera around, but this is what I do. I get the yardage, I put some of it flat on my table, and this part here I hold with my 2 thumbs and pointers on each corner, and I let it hang. I don't want to go this way. You see how you have that drag line there, how it's like pulling? Or if you go the other way, you'll have a drag line. I let it hang, and then I fold it right to see, let me clear off this corner. And then I fold it to where it wants to fall. If I see that it starts to skew one way or the other with these drag lines, I won't. I'll pick it right back up and then re-drop it down and smooth it out with my hands. And I can kind of tell where there's some drag lines. So can you see how it's like a little bit bubbly? If it's not completely on grain, I pick it up. And this has creases in it, so this is why it's good to starch, because once you starch it, it's not gonna have the memory of these creases, and instead the fabric is gonna wanna fall where it wants to. But that looks pretty good to me there. Then, I'll take my long strip ruler. I line up, whoopsie. Then I line up the long strip ruler. I use any straight line on the ruler to line it up against the fold here. If you fold your fabric on grain, this fold line should be perfectly on grain, meaning that this is a straight edge, that I can use this to measure off of on a ruler. So if I put my ruler right here, and I put just a straight line for my ruler here, the ruler is either square or rectangular. That means that if this is straight, this has to be straight, giving me a 90-degree angle, which is what I want to minimize, or like to clean up the edge here, you know? So I'm just gonna make a super teensy cut. Okay, and I get rid of that clean, you know, the little bit that I cut off because it was uneven. Now I have an even edge to work off of. So let me cut a strip and we'll open it and see how good of a job I did. So then let's say I want to cut a 3-inch square, or a 3-inch strip that's then going to get subcut. So I put 3 inches. You know me, I like to slide my ruler, so I don't like grippy rulers. I like to be able to check the full length, especially on a strip, because you can measure 3 inches here, and just because this ruler is bumped up next to this one does not mean that up here it's the same, and I'll show you how that works. So I just moved this fabric, or the ruler, over. I have 3 inches here, and my 2 rulers are bumped up, but watch. Once I start to slide this, I'm at 3 1/8, and up here, I'm all the way at 3 1/4. So don't assume that just because you have 3 inches at the bottom beginning, that this ruler is gonna span the whole way the exact same dimensions. So it starts off at 3 inches, and I end up at 3 1/2 up here. So I like to slide the ruler to ensure that that strip is 3 inches all the way through. And then I just adjust. As I see that it's off, I adjust it back here and here. So now we cut. And now for the big reveal, I'm holding my breath. here's my strip, and this is that little elbow that we talk about that you can get in the center. And it looks perfect. You see? Nice and straight. If it wasn't, you would have this kind of buckling here. And actually, let me cut one like that, just for some of you that maybe are new to quilting, or maybe you cut perfect and you've never had this issue. Let's do it. So I'm going to put the fabric a little bit off grain. And see, I have these little drag lines here, but I'm kind of like, you just kind of smooth them out. That's what a lot of people do, is like, oh no, but it lies flat. It must be on grain. It's smooth. So say I clean off this edge. So now I'm thinking, okay, it's perfectly on grain, which really, to tell you the truth, looking at the fabric, I can see that it's not. But if you didn't know any better, you're like, okay, this is straight. I cleaned it off. I have a clean cut edge to cut. And now let's cut our 3-inch strip. That's 3 inches. And then we open it. And it's still good. Because I cleaned off the edge and fixed it. Oh my word, I can't. So that goes to show you that even that, you'll still get it. I mean, I can see it. There's like a little bit of a bubble in here, but it wasn't that off grain. So let me see. It's so hard once you practice the right ways to go back and make these mistakes. But you can see, and sometimes when you get the fabric, like I was saying, they're not always printed on grain. You see how off it is right here? Sometimes people will just like match up selvage to selvage, even though it creates this look, and they'll say, well, the selvage is matched, so it must be on grain. And the stiffer the fabric is, the easier it's going to be for it to fold on grain for you. So that's another reason to starch. If it's really flimsy, it's kind of harder to tell. But I can look at this fabric, and it's kind of like a, the repeats, I can see that the lines are like, it's printed off. Like I can see it in the design. So sometimes it'll be printed off, and you'll think that it's your cutting that's making it off. And it's not. It's because the design as it was printed on the fabric is off. So you can see, if you look at the fabrics, you can see the grain lines going one way, like horizontally, and then the other grain line going perpendicular to it. So try to focus beyond the fabric colors and design and see if you can tell where it's, you know, like where the lines are. So you can try and line it up on grain. But definitely starching it helps. I can't even think of how to get like a messed up elbow anymore because I'm so, let me see. Because it really is like, it has to be off at the fold, and then the rest of the strip works the rest of the way. And you know what that has to do with too, now that I think about it, is the measurement. So if it's not accurate the whole way, sometimes you'll end up with that, because if it's like narrower here and then it goes out, it will like go wide and pinch in at the fold. Okay? Hi, Victoria. She says she's tuning in late. Let me clean this edge off, and then I'll show you something else that often happens too with these cuts. If you're cutting, say, 6 or 7 strips across and you're going 2 inches, and then you stop and you cut another 2 inches. So there's 2 inches. If you just continue to go in one direction, eventually some people say after 3 cuts, I find maybe every 4 or 5, for me, if I'm not that accurate, they'll start to just get skewed. So then you'll come to see and you're like, wow, this doesn't even measure the true measurement because I've been slightly cutting at an angle and it just keeps compounding itself as it goes across and across. So sometimes what I do is, say I need a bunch of 2.5-inch strips, is that I will cut a 5-inch strip, because 2.5 plus 2.5 is 5. And so I will double the width of whatever the strip I need is. That's straight. This is straight. And then I'll go in and cut the 2.5 in half, because now I know that it has to measure exactly right down the middle. And I find that that really, really helps to keep those, like the cut edges from skewing. So try that next time you're cutting a lot of strips and you find that, because usually every 3 to 5 strips, you have to like stop and clean off the edge to re-straighten it out again, and then continue cutting some strips, and then stop and re-clean up that edge because it will start to go a little at a time. Okay, Victoria's asking, what are the dimensions of the larger rectangular ruler I'm using now? Girl, this is my favorite strip ruler, 6 inches by 24. This is the bomb, a must-have if you're ever cutting from yardage. You can see that this yardage is just like it would appear on the bolt. And so it spans a little bit up top and a little bit at the bottom, longer than that fabric quilting cotton width, which is usually anywhere from 42 to 44 inches. And so this on the fold definitely cuts everything. You see how I can span? The ruler is longer than the yardage. The time over here, somebody's asking what time is it? It's 5:10 over here. Okay, speaking of this fabric that I'm just happily chopping away at. Hold on. I'm gonna cut this for you like this. And I'm gonna show you what the elbow thing is. So I've just cut a sliver slightly off, not perfectly straight, but a little bit off. And then I'm gonna cut, say, a 2.5 inch strip. And I think this is gonna give me, let me see. So something like this. You see how at the fold, it peeks out a little bit there? Like a slight elbow. It's almost like instead of the strip going straight, it wants to like buckle on me. Like this is going slightly down and this is going slightly down and it bubbles up right there. Do you see how it's not perfectly straight? It's hard to tell. That's what they're talking about, the little elbow. But sometimes you get it really pronounced and it's because it's the accuracy of everything, right? The fabric to be on grain, if it's not folded right, and especially it happens a lot in strips because of what I showed you earlier, that I slide my ruler all the way up to make sure that that measurement is spanning the whole way. If it's off at the top or the bottom, the angles are going off a little bit. So it's not gonna be a perfectly straight strip. So sometimes you end up with those kind of buckled edges there. But man, I haven't done that, I wanna say like in 10 years. So it's hard to like go back to how I used to, how I used to mess up back in the days. All right, and then I was gonna show you all something. We are doing, I just had one of my employees add these bundles to the website. We got a great deal on them, so we're passing them off as a ridiculous deal. We're offering free shipping on these bundles in the US. They're half-yard bundles, they're 10 half-yard chunks, and then the 1 yard bundles, which are 10 1-yard pieces. And this one, 1 yard, so 10 yards of fabric, and they're all different fabrics. You get 10 yards of fabric and shipping for free for 55 bucks for 10 yards of fabric shipped in the US. If you're an international customer and you make the purchase for these bundles, we don't have that many of them to go around, so we just posted them, you know, as kind of like a flash sale. And then we'll just invoice you for the added shipping cost if you're international. But in the US, they ship free. And then the half-yard cuts are half yards. There's 10 different fabrics. And that's a 5-yard total, and they ship for free, and it's 30 bucks. So it's a good way to build up your stash and to make like charity quilts and baby quilts and stuff like that, or even to play around with some of these mystery block of the week ones as you're learning, you know, accuracy and cutting and pressing and stuff like that. So they're just some good kind of bargain bundles, and they are Marcus Fabrics, which is still a designer quality company, okay? So that is that, and we don't have that many, but they're listed in the online shop at craftygemini.com/shop. All right, so let me head back over to my table here, and that way I can see all the comments that I missed doing my demo over there in the chat. So let's see. Jackie says she loves the Olfa frosted rulers. They're my absolute favorite. I even bought some so I can carry them in the shop here in person. All right, let's see. I answered Victoria's question. Oh, you guys were talking about like Best Press and the prices and stuff. Wow. Jacqueline says $38 for a bottle of Best Press in Canada. Yikes. For me, I know that it's more expensive than $1 something. So yeah, I don't buy it because I use starch for everything. And you know, I teach a lot of classes for beginners and kids. And I have to have them starch everything because otherwise, you know, they can't cut that accurately. And kids, I don't let them use rotary cutters. So they're always using scissors. So the crisper I can get it, the easier it is for them to sew, to sew and to press and to cut. And they need to trace out their templates on the fabric. So starching, if you are somebody who's kind of been on the fence, like, oh, I'm not about this starching life, try it. Rhonda's asking, when can we buy all the different fabrics that are in the shop? So we've added a bunch, I think like 30 to 40. Some have already sold out. And then we will be adding more this week. I have one of my employees coming tomorrow night to photograph and list more fabrics. So we're just, you know, it takes time because there's so many different fabrics. And yeah, so we'll be adding more of the quilting cottons. I created a different category in the shop for rayon challis. So I'm going to do them like that, like different sub menus that are specific to the type of fabric that it is, so that the fashion fabric doesn't just get mixed matched with the quilting cottons. So it'll say like quilting cotton. Right now it's just under fabric, but when we get more listed, there'll be its own category under quilting cottons. So that way, you know, if you're looking for quilting cottons, you can just look there. Okay. Janet says, the problem I have is trying to pick different fabrics to go together. I realize it is a personal preference, but I keep trying too much to make them match. So that is a super personal preference. And when people come in here, they're like, can you help me find something for this? I'm so hesitant to even offer my choice because 9 times out of 10, I get like massively rejected. Like, oh no, that definitely doesn't match. And it's like, lady, then why did you ask me? Especially me, because I'm a little crazy with colors. And so I'm like not the best person. If you're very like conservative in your color choices or matchy and stuff, me, you know me, I'll throw an orange with a pink and a highlighter yellow and a purple and a neon green. I don't care. So as long as I have that contrast in there, so, you know, they pick a fabric and I'm like, you sure you want me to help you? Okay. Then I pick a crazy print. They're like, oh, I don't like that. And I'm thinking, this goes beautiful. So yeah, I don't like to do that because I don't like people trying at least to make me feel a certain kind of way because they don't like my color choices. I'm like, then just pick what you like. That's why we have so many fabrics, right? Quilting cottons come in like 3 million different colors, and there's new collections coming out every week because everybody likes different things. Everybody. Fabric, and I've always done it. Like sometimes I do bundles, like giveaways of like ugly fabrics to me. And I've done it before in chats and people are like, ooh, it's gorgeous. And I'm like, girl, you could have it. But that's just how it works. You just got to get comfortable. I think a lot of people overthink it. And I realized that a long time ago too for myself, because once it's done, like sometimes where I was just like, I don't have time for this, or, you know, I have babies running around and I just need to get this done. And I wouldn't have picked exactly what I wanted. Once the quilt is done, I go back and I'm like, why was I fussing so much about these choices? I love the way it turned out. And those maybe weren't my first or second choice, but it looks great. So I come to realize after a couple projects, like, it's not that serious. Pick whatever. It's still gonna look good. It's a quilt. It's handmade, you know? It looks fine. All right. Do you pre-wash your fabric for quilting as we do for apparel? I don't. That's like, you know, there's 2 schools of thought, and it's a very heated argument that you can get into in the forums online about washing or not washing. I'll tell you why I don't pre-wash my quilting cottons. I don't pre-wash them because a lot of the companies come out with those pre-cut stacks, you know, like charm packs or layer cakes or jelly rolls, whatever, 2.5-inch strips. There's all kinds of different put-ups, like different ways that they're cutting the fabric down into. And they specifically tell you, do not pre-wash these pre-cuts. So that tells me if it's the exact same fabric that they sell in yardage and they've pre-cut it, and they're telling me don't pre-wash it, obviously, because imagine if you wash the charm pack. What do you think is going to happen if you throw 42 5-inch squares in the wash? It's going to be a hot mess, lint everywhere. Even if they're the ones with the pinked edges, you're going to have threads to last you a lifetime hanging off of every single square. The whole thing is going to get tangled up in the wash, and you're going to have to cut them down. You're going to end up with nothing, like 3-inch squares after that. What's the point of paying a premium to have a company cut you squares to 5 inches and then you're shrinking them down because you want to pre-wash it? No. The company tells you don't wash them. I'm not washing them. And then on top of that, we hang dry everything because we don't have a dryer now. I can't justify wasting electricity and water and then having to hang this stuff up for what? I'm gonna wash the quilt afterwards. So really, if it's a decent quality quilting cotton, it will typically shrink, they tell you, the manufacturers will tell you, about 1 to 3%. That's not enough to make me yank out my hair or to really care. And then what it does do is that if you quilt it a lot, even if you quilt it loosely, really, after the quilting is done, like after you sandwich it together and you do your stitching through the layers, that's called quilting, and you wash it, it gets that crinkled love, just like somebody has been using this quilt for years look, and I love that. So another reason I don't pre-wash. But I will give those of you that are pre-washers a tip that will save you on electricity and water and the drama of having to wash your fabric. What the washing is doing, right, it's pre-shrinking it because you're adding moisture and typically heat in the dryer, okay? That's how you're shrinking some of the cotton fiber, you know, the natural fiber of the cotton. And oh my goodness, sorry, I have to stop for this. Audrey says, I wash all my fabric and I hand dry all of it. Girl, you are better than me. Because I can't imagine if I took up all the clotheslines, hanging yardage, my husband would probably lose his mind because he does laundry. He'll be like, why are there sheets hanging out here in all these random fabrics? Oh, that's hilarious. Girl, no. But what was I saying about the, oh, here's a tip for like you can still get the same pre-washing effect without pre-washing. Heat and moisture is going to shrink the cotton fibers, okay? Heat and moisture. What can we do without popping it in the washer and dryer that will still allow us to add heat and moisture? Anybody? I'll see if somebody wants to chime in. If you've been around watching my stuff for years, you probably already know. Margie says the iron. Sally says an iron. Helen says iron, and Martha says starch. Victoria says starch and iron, and all of you are exactly right. If you starch or you steam, you're adding moisture and heat, and that will, cheater method, pre-shrink it. Okay? Michelle says steam iron it. Liz says steam iron. That's exactly right. If you, or Ella says spritz it with water and then the iron. If you're someone who has like hard water, or you have a steam iron but you don't like to put water in it so that it sputters all the kind of dirty water in it, another way to get around that but still steam is to just get a plain water bottle and with water in it and spritz that on your fabric first, and then just run the hot dry iron over it. You're still creating the same effect, steam. And so that's a quick way if you don't want it to get like a super crinkly look after you wash it, which if you wash and dry it, it's still gonna happen. But that's a way to pre-shrink it without having to pop it in the wash. Audrey says she has 4 drying racks in her basement. She don't pre-wash to shrink it. She pre-washes it, to get rid of the manufacturing chemicals. True. I just wash it after. I fill that sucker up with starch. I press it flat, and then when I'm done with the whole quilt, then I wash it. Especially if I'm giving it as a gift. You know, if you're giving a baby quilt especially, you don't want little sensitive baby skins with all that stuff on it. So I do go ahead and wash it. All right, so that is a way to get around that. But no, I don't pre-wash anything. And I sometimes won't even pre-wash my garment fabrics. Shh, don't tell anybody. If it's like a loose fitting garment, I'm like, I got a little wiggle room in there to shrink. Let's call it a day. But you know, I'm a little bit wild like that. I love to live on the wild side. But definitely quilting cottons, no ma'am, you will not catch me. The only times I will say that I would suggest you pre-wash it is if you're working with a batik fabric that is like a burgundy wine, those darker colors, navy. Batiks I find that are really, really saturated and they will tend to bleed. But if you don't want to, just pop it in the wash with whatever, what do they call them? Those color catcher things in the wash so it can catch the color. But those are some of the fabrics that really, really I find have the most dye like saturated into them. So think about that. Jen says, not a quilting related question, but what size washer do you use for weights when tracing out the patterns? So let's measure them. I get them at the hardware store, like Ace Hardware or Home Depot. You can buy them individually, but usually they'll have like a little bin of individuals and then behind it they'll have a box. And it's usually cheaper to get the whole box, and I think it comes with 20 in there. Let's measure them. These are the ones I use. Sometimes they have like letters and numbers on them. This one doesn't. And so the diameter of this thing is 2 inches. They're 2-inch washers. From top to bottom edge is 2 inches. So that hole in the middle probably is just an inch. Nope, it's less. 7/8. Less than that. 5/8. 7/8. Yeah, 7/8. So the hole is 7/8. The diameter of the center hole is 7/8, and then the diameter of the outer, the whole thing, is 2 inches. And I find that like the smaller ones in this, they're not quite as hefty. So these are like the perfect weight to hold. Barb is asking, are they expensive? I think 60 to 80 cents each, something like that. But if you bought the box of 20, it's even cheaper. But no, not very expensive. And totally worth it, I think. Yep, Audrey says she goes to the hardware store and just buys the biggest washers they sell. These are usually it. There's some slightly smaller, but they're way thinner. So if you see how thick these are, you want to get something that has some weight to it. Otherwise, there's just going to be a little metal disc, you know, swishing around on your pattern. It's not going to, if it doesn't have weight to it, it don't matter the size. It could be smaller, but if it's heavier, then that's what you want. Okay? Mimi says, I don't understand the weights for cutting patterns. So I use weights because I use a rotary cutter for cutting patterns. So this helps the patterns stay flat on the fabric. And this is not for quilting, it's more for garment sewing. But they stay flat on it, and then I can cut around it with the rotary cutter. If you're someone who's used to cutting out pattern pieces with scissors, then the weights won't work because you have to lift up the layers of fabric and pattern paper to get the scissor blade underneath it. And so these are just gonna be sliding off. So in those instances, it's better to actually pin the pattern piece to the fabric so that they stay together even as you lift and cut across. All right. All right. Awesome. So let's see if anybody has any other questions for me. Raise your hand if you want some tougher blocks for mystery block of the week ones. I was kind of easing into it, but the Ohio Star one I thought was pretty tough. Like I just threw one together quick and I was like, man, it's not perfect. What's going on? No. And then I had to try harder on the second one. But yeah, if you all are loving the corners and a lot of points, and I know a lot of people really like star blocks, I'll throw some more in there. Why not? Okay, good. Laura says, why not? And she raised her hand. Victoria says, I do. Liz says, no. All right, so we'll balance them out. You know, we'll balance out the last couple ones. Some people are saying yes, some people saying no. Oh, man, hilarious. Okay. But yeah, we have, let me see, Jen is asking, organic cotton, why is it different? Are you asking me, like, what is the difference in the organic cotton fabric? We carry some organic cotton here at the shop, and it's by a company called Mona Luna Fabrics. They're out of California, and she only sells GOTS. It's GOTS. It's like whatever the company is that certifies cotton or for organic stuff. It's 100% GOTS certified organic cotton, and it's just basically the cotton that they're using to create the fabric is organic. So that's what it is. All right. All right, good. Prudence says, thanks for the instruction to participate in the chat. Yeah, a lot of people just press play, but if you don't open up the video player with the chat, then you can't participate in the chat. So I'm so glad that so many of you are chit-chatting here. I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up. We are gonna end it off with a giveaway. So like I do for the giveaways on the Quilt Club, because I know this time doesn't work for everybody. Thank you for those of you overseas that are still waking up or that have stayed up late just to catch us and chat with us tonight. I'm gonna be giving away 2 quilting books. Look how cool. This is called the Modern Medallion Workbook. Okay, it's by Stash Books, and it's written by Janice Zeller-Ryan and Beth Vasilo. Lots of fun, and I love, look at that quilt on the back. How cute is that? So this is by Stash Books. I think I said that. There's 11 designers, and they share their quilt projects to make, mix, and match. So I thought this would be very appropriate for 2019 Quilt Club. So we'll pick 2 winners, one of you that is live on with us now, and the other winner will win the second copy of the book, and I will just pick at random a Quilt Club member. So even if you weren't able to tune in live, you still have a chance, okay? So isn't that cute? I'm gonna peep the book open so you all can see some of this. There's a bunch of different projects. There's different, so if some of you know My friend Latifa Safir, she's the one that has the clammy ruler. She has a design in here. Alexia Marcel Abeg, she's was one of the designers of Cotton and Steel. She's now one of the designers of what they turned into. Like after they left Cotton and Steel, the girls created Ruby Star Society. So she's in here. Rebecca Bryan, Christina Lane. So a lot of like famous, blogger online people have projects in here. Has all kinds of information on staying organized, design wall. And I think this is a great scrap busting kind of, how cool is that? The clammy ruler, it's one for cutting curves. And we'll talk about it in the Quilt Club when I show you how to do the improvisational curves. I'll show you, for those of you that are like, no, improv is not for me. I will show you her tool because I carry it here in my shop. This is another design from in there. Ooh, how fun and scrappy is that? Imagine, and you know what? Let's do something. Let me grab the Ruby ruler so you can see how it shows up. It's not just for fabric. If you see a design, print it out in color and play with it like that so you also can see what's kind of the color value options are. But this one is so scrappy. I want to get the Ruby ruler and let me show it to you through that to see if you see how cool it looks. So many different fabrics. Okay, let me rig up my hands here. Hello, Ruby friends. Look at that. Do you see how you just see like the pops of darks and lights and darks and lights? Amazing. How fun. Oh, what a cute little quilt. It definitely is a great scrap buster book. And this is, let me see the center medallion. Oh, I want to see the finished thing. Oh, you see, it breaks it down for you. Look how cute this one is. I really like this. Very fresh and modern. Kind of minimalistic. Still one of these medallion quilts that, starts in the center with like a focal point, patchwork block unit, and then it grows out from there. How fresh is that? And that is the one that I showed y'all on the back of the book. I love, love, love that. It's called the June Medallion. That's by Beth Vassilo. That's a super pretty one. A wedding bouquet. So I think this book is going to be great for y'all because whoever gets it, there's going to be stuff here that you can whip up even if you're a beginner, and then there's stuff that's going to definitely test you, like them curves on this medallion quilt, because that is no joke. And then this is Latifa's quilt. Are y'all ready for this? She is an engineer by trade, so she's all about the angles and numbers. This is a showstopper. Isn't that crazy? So she does a lot of stuff with like bias tape going around those curves, like is appliqued on. And let me see, I think that's what this one is. Yep. Techniques on how to make the bias tape, all that stuff. Super duper cool. And then look how fun, for those of you that want to play with color and color value, these are line drawings of the quilts in here. So you can use color pencils, photocopy this, and then use color pencils or markers to play around with scrappy colors, like scrappy fabrics, and just play around with colors and see. It is by Stash Books. This is a great little book. All the quilts are in here in just black and white line drawings. I love the geometric feel of all these. And obviously I didn't show you all of them, but there are some of the designers. And then the template pieces that you might need are in the back of the book here for the applique pieces or templates for curves and stuff like that. Okay, so a great little book. So we're gonna do 2 winners. I would like, for those of you that are chatting with us live here, go ahead and chat in the box and tell me trying to think. What is your favorite thread to use for piecing your quilts? What's the favorite thread that you like to use? Go ahead and enter that comment in the chat box, and then I will, after the chat is over, pick a winner. We'll contact you, and I put it last time on the club page. So if you're the winner from the one like you weren't in live, or maybe you're not watching this live chat, you can still find out if you won or not. Okay? Awesome. So most of you are saying Aurifil, sulky, Aurifil. It is. Barbara says that that's really great. Those line drawings are great for working on color selection. I agree. And there are 11 modern medallion quilts ranging from basic to advanced. You see? Super duper cool. What a fun little book. So yeah, I think the winners will really, really like this book. It's chunky with all the pattern pieces. Looks good. Okay. Sally says Gutermann by habit. In Australia, she says they use red and a lot Aurifil, or in Australia we use red. Aurifil, Gutermann. Cool. Wonderfil, that's my favorite, Barb. I love me some Wonderfil. It's like half the cost. And we have all those threads that I talked about last time. We still haven't listed them on the site because I haven't come up with a way. I think I'm just gonna have to like list a bundle of it and then just like have a drop down box that you can choose the color that you want and sell them like that. Okay. All right. So thank you everybody for tuning into the live chat today. I hope we covered a lot of stuff and answered some really great questions that you all asked. And yeah, Laura's asking, does Wonderfil make a polyester? They do. They make like an all-purpose polyester called Designer. And I use that sometimes, you know, like in handbags or when I do retreats or quilting cruises, like for the kits, we put that in there. It's just like a generic 100% polyester, all-purpose thread, you know, good for all kind of just random stuff. Rhonda's asking, how do you tell what the weight is for Gutermann thread? So Gutermann, I think they do like the Tex whatever, Tex 27, Tex 30. And there's like, you can pull up a chart online that kind of tells you what that converts into. I want to say Tex 27, let me see. Tex 30 is about a 40 weight thread. Because I know that because I use it. So I looked that up. Tex 30, yeah. They do like they use a different system for weighing the thread to determine what the actual, you know, the word weight, 50 weight, 40 weight thing is. It's Tex 30. Maybe Tex 30 is 30 weight. I don't know. Years ago, I looked up a chart and it showed me like the difference of all the things, but I only was looking for like something specific. So I don't remember all the things, but I would look it up online because there's a lot of Gutermann threads though. They make, I mean, from super thin to super duper thick. So you have to like really know which Gutermann, and not just Gutermann, like Gutermann Mara 70, you know, Gutermann 100, Gutermann 120, Gutermann 150. Like there's all these different categories and they're all will tell you what it's recommended to use for. Lightweight wovens, medium weight knits, like it's so many, so many. All right. Mimi says, did you say it's okay to use polyester for piecing or quilting? I'm not what they call like a quilting purist. I mean, if you can afford 100% cotton thread and use it for all your piecing on cotton fabric, that's great. If what you have in your stash that you want to use or all you can afford is polyester all-purpose thread, that's great. I've never had a problem. When I first started, I used polyester thread, like whatever Coats and Clark I could find at Joann's when I first started. And I still use those quilts today. They've been washed thousands of times, used at the beach, picnic quilts and all, and they're still holding up. So maybe in 20 years, they'll fall to pieces. I don't know. But I'm not a quilting purist in the sense of like cotton fabric, cotton thread. I have to use everything cotton. I know because I didn't start off using cotton anything because I couldn't afford cotton anything. So I've done polyester battings. I've done all kinds of stuff and they work fine. You know, I'm a fan of like, if that's what you can afford and you're going to quilt, then do it. As long as you know, making the projects, that's fine. All right. So good. I'm glad some of you found this chat informative. All right. Okay. Oh, wow. Jacqueline says she has a 2-inch little ruby ruler. You definitely got to hold that one right up to your face then to see. I can see all my blocks behind me. They look great. See? I love the look of that. So funky. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. Remember, you can always reach me at my email address, reply to any of the emails that I've sent you if you have a specific question for me. Otherwise, my assistant and another one of our new employees will be answering like the customer service questions on the b@craftygemini.com email address. Otherwise, happy sewing. Starch or don't starch your fabrics. And look forward to Wednesday when we post the next mystery block of the week, number 7. All right? Thanks again, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye. Thank you, Margie.